This is the last bed that I'm going to make up here on the slope on the back side of my yard. And in it are 12 bags left over of Americana on the back, and then 8 bags of vulgaris towards the front. And I've divided the two species with about a foot of dirt. So hopefully they won't cross. I don't think it would be a big issue if it did anyhow, but we'll see. Now I had an issue with this bed, with the spawn, because this Americana, I kind of got sidetracked a bit making these beds, and with other work as well. I had 12 bags left over that I probably should have planted sooner, and in those 12 bags, about half of them had some green mold pop up in some small spots. And most likely that's just because they were over 10 weeks old. Morel Kings told me that I need to be using this spawn between 4 and 8 weeks. So in the future I'm going to try to use it as soon as it hits the 4-week mark when it's fully colonized. Also had 1 bag of the vulgaris that got some mold spots. And the vulgaris that I used was right at the 2-month mark at 8 weeks. So yeah, I want to use it right at the 4-week mark, and probably next year too I'll make my grain spawn up for the different species throughout the season, instead of making it all up at the beginning and then putting it in to the refrigerator for storage. I think that kind of weakens it a bit, and maybe that lends to it, but most likely the problem with the green mold is just that I'm waiting too long to use the bags, and I'm doing grain bag to sawdust bag transfers, which aren't 100% clean, but they do work. And Morel King says that you can plant the spawn if it's got a small amount of mold in it like that. You'll just have fewer morels that pop up. So yeah, I haven't lost the bags. I just might get a hit from it, but we'll have to see to the spring. Wait to then and see what kind of results we get. But I'm going to go ahead and put the hoops on this one, shade cloth as well. It finally cooled off a bit in Ohio. It really got up to over 90 degrees and very hot and sunny this past week. So it's a good thing I had the shade cloth on these beds over here. And by the way too, these first 3 beds I made up with Americana, I didn't find any mold in it. Every bag that I used in those were perfect. I spent the day cleaning up this garden row that had some old pumpkins in it. The pumpkins didn't do so well this year. I got them in way too late. I should have got them in the same time I did the winter squash, which my butternuts did well. Got about 80 of those, about medium size, out of that row. So pretty good. And I've taken the landscape fabric off. Won't be using that. And you can see the row itself is a tad bit narrower than the fresh rows I've made up on the side of the slope on the back of the yard. That's really no problem. I'm going to take these rebar stakes, take them out, and then re-pound them in about 6 inches wider, make them the same width as those other rows. And then I'll have enough surface area for the mushrooms to pop up. And you can see that it looks a bit flat and compact, but that's just because it's the end of the season. I'm going to take the rototiller to it and fluff it back up. And something I've realized, a disadvantage of doing this on a garden that's landscape fabric in the footpaths and whatnot, I won't be able to use my rototiller with the furrow on it to push the dirt up into a nice, neat, clean row, just because the tines on it will tear up the fabric. I guess if you had like wood chip footpaths, that wouldn't be so much of a problem. But I'll probably just use a hand hoe, do it by hand, and clean it up, square it up, then get my spawn in there. You can see the dirt is bone dry. It hasn't rained in about 2.5 weeks, and it's been pretty hot and sunny. So I will have to re-wet this ground before I add the spawn. And then after I cover it up, I'm going to give it another light watering. Nothing too much where the ground's really soaking wet and saturated, but enough that you bring it near to field capacity. Got this row tilled up. Wasn't too hard. Broke up pretty easy. Maybe only took me an hour to do this 80-foot row. So now it's time to get it wet and then get some spawn into it. I've got this row inoculated, and you can see I have a different kind of plastic on it. I got a free roll of this green quote-unquote plastic mulch meant for garden rows. You'd plant like onion sets or whatnot down the center of it. I got this from a farmer friend that wasn't using it, so thanks to him. And it's still 4 feet wide, about the same thickness, but a little bit more durable than that clear plastic, so that's good. Also too, the roll of it was pretty heavy, so rolling it down the row kind of flattened it out a bit and leveled everything at the top. And I have it weighed down with some bricks and sandbags at the moment. So all I have to do now is put the stakes back in at the proper width, rebend some more of these PVC pieces into hoops, and I'll probably still put shade cloth on this row. It might be the last row I have to do it this year, because now it's cooled off quite a bit, but you can see it's still quite sunny out here. Probably about 65 degrees out today. I must have accidentally bought the high quality PVC pipe for all these hoops, because rebending them has been a bit tough. Actually, I used my entire body weight to bend the ends, and some of them I couldn't get as wide as I really wanted to. But it seems that these stakes are spaced fine for it. And you can see each hoop is actually probably a little bit over 5 feet, so a little bit more clearance too. Something of a note, you can see I got 2 holes here in my plastic where a deer walked over it. Those are deer hoof marks, because I forgot to close the gate up in my garden the other night. So be aware that the wildlife, even though they may not want to eat your mushrooms, which I'm surprised I haven't seen like a mouse or something tearing into this, but yeah, be aware that they'll walk all over your project and tear it up if you don't secure the area. Looks good. Now it's on to this back row. I'm going to tear out these old tomato plants. They've pretty much done their job for the year. You can see this row, only about 60 feet, gave me around 200 pounds of Paisano tomatoes, which are aroma style, good for salsa and making your pasta sauces and things like that. So yeah, good year for tomatoes. And then I still have a few Big Daddy pepper plants in this row. I'm going to go ahead and break those down, get the peppers off. You can see where some of them kind of got withered and dried a bit on the side, because this past week we had record heat, extreme sun, which when you have extreme sun with peppers, it'll cause this burn on them, which if you had a lot of shade cloth or something like that, you could throw over the top of it in the middle of the day and prevent it, but I just didn't have the time. So I'm going to tear all this out, get it all tilled up again, knock the stakes out, do the same thing as I did to the other row, and hopefully catch up to just 1 month time for all my spawn.